Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramu, Hare Ramu, Ramu Ramu, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivjakacharya Astatura Sata Shri Srimad. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Sukhahu Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda. Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasari Gauda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees, and all glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Namah Budleshmari Bhaktivedanta Swami Te Namane Namaste Saraswati Devim Gauravani Pacharane Nirvashesha Shunyavad Paschya Desha Charane. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So before beginning tonight's talk, which will be from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, 59th verse, for those of you who have cell phones and have the database on it, you're welcome to tune it in, because it'll be just a few moments and we'll be beginning the actual verse, and I will be calling for those of you who would like to chant it in solo after I do. Okay? Before actually beginning the talk, I want to thank you all very much for coming. It's a pleasure seeing you again, and glad that you're still here, and glad that you're supporting the temple as you are, and enabling so many of the devotees to express their love and affection and dedication to Srila Prabhupada, to Lord Sri Krishna, Srimati Radharani, and all of those great personalities who have helped to make this temple become a reality. So thank you all. It's deeply appreciated, not lightly. And as a result, this temple goes on, and there are many wonderful things planned for it in the future. I was talking with the temple president and just a few days ago, and just as you see these beautiful altars, it was once just basically a cushion, and now just see it. And we have new doors which have just come. All these are the result of the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and the mercy of Sri Sri Rukmini and Dwarkadash, Sri Sri Jagannath, Baladev Lady Subhadra, and Sri Sri Gaurnitai. So we can all thank them. And again, I thank you for giving me the opportunity to share these incredibly wonderful, marvelous teachings that Srila Prabhupada has so mercifully brought to us. And I pray and beg and hope that whatever I say tonight will in some way inspire or incite any and all of us to give ourselves more and more to the Supreme Lord in loving service, and watch the amazing, if not miraculous, happenings that will occur in your life. I speak from personal experience and from the experience of some of these newer persons here. There's nothing like it. Thank you. So, we're not going to have the board? Okay. So, I will sing the verse first, and then whoever would like to sing it, I'll call for you to raise your hand, and then I'll call upon you. Okay? Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehinaha Rasavrajan rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehinam rasavrajam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate Vishaya vinivartante Niraharasya dehina Rasavrajam rasopyasya Param dristva nivartate. Translation. Sorry. The number again is chapter 2, verse 59. Translation. Though the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, the taste for sense objects remains. But ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness. Please repeat. Though the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, the taste for sense objects remains. But ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness. That's Krishna consciousness. Purport. This is Srila Prabhupada's comment on the verse that I've just read. Unless one is transcendently situated, it is not possible to cease from sense enjoyment. The process of restriction from sense enjoyment by rules and regulations is something like restricting a diseased person from certain types of edibles. The patient, however, neither likes such restrictions nor loses his taste for edibles. Similarly, sense restriction by some spiritual process like Ashtanga Yoga. How many of us know what Ashtanga Yoga is? Raise your hand if you know, because I'll explain it. I want you to understand this. Nobody knows? You know? Hand up. Okay, we know one person knows Ashtanga Yoga. Well, I better start lecturing on that. So Ashtanga Yoga is one of the forms of yoga. There is Karma Yoga, Mantra Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, like we just read, Karma Yoga, and several other yogas. So Ashtanga Yoga is known as the 8-form yoga, and Srila Prabhupada will mention as it's coming up exactly what those 8 are, so I won't have to say it twice. Similarly, sense restriction by some spiritual process like Ashtanga Yoga in the matter of yama, niyama, asana. Okay, yama means what we should not do. Don't do this, like don't drink alcohol, or don't smoke cigarettes, or don't use cuss words unnecessarily, or at all if possible. So there are things we don't do in a civilized society. So yama is one of the things we do not do, and niyama is the things that we do. So in niyama we speak nicely, we brush our teeth in the morning, we do some breathing exercises or other exercises, we offer prayers to the Supreme Lord, we bow down our head to the deity of the Lord in our home or in the temple. So these are things that we do, okay? Asana means basically posture. But all of us are in asana right now. We're sitting in a particular posture. Generally, it's done with the legs crossed, but if you have problems with the knees, then don't cross your legs. Or if you need to sit in a chair, that's okay too. It doesn't really matter. The important point is that one learned to hold a steady pose. Pranayama means controlling the life force through the breathing. So these are breathing exercises, which are very good for the lungs, for one thing, and they're very good for the controlling of the mind. Pratyahara continues that process so that the mind may be completely controlled. Some of us, I'm sorry. This will help. Some of us may have that problem where you try to go to sleep at night and your mind just doesn't turn off. Anybody here? Oh, maybe it's too personal. I was going to ask if anybody. Yeah, well, it's very common. Sometimes it takes a person an hour to fall asleep. Some fall asleep and they're asleep even before they hit the bed. Those are the people who really go to work and really work hard often. So the important point is that we know exactly what we are doing, so that in pratyahara we learned how to shut the mind down. See, breathing and thought go together. If you're breathing very rapidly, you'll find that your thinking is also going very rapidly. And if you're breathing very slowly, almost to a standstill, you'll find that your concentration is generally quite focused and quite good. And if you've ever taken a test in school, and if you've ever just noticed, are you breathing or not, you'll see that you're hardly breathing, or our breathing has slowed down considerably. So those are some of the things that occur. So this process, which is a conscious process, this process is controllable. So what we do is we learn how to, that's in the Ashtanga Yoga process. We don't practice that here, okay? But I want to let everybody know what Prabhupada is talking about. So that's Pratyahara, and then comes Dharana, which is increasing the, hello? Okay. Yeah, if you have a cell phone, appreciate if you turn it off now. And please don't make any calls during the course of this talk, unless it's more important than what I have to say. And if that's the case, Kwanan, you just can come up here and tell everybody what is more important. And then maybe we can learn something else, okay? I usually tell that to little children, and they're always very eager to come up. But unfortunately, what they have to say is generally not important. It's just the way it goes. So, Dharana is concentration, dhyana is even further concentration, and then of course samadhi, which is the deepest form of concentration, and it brings one into a different realm of consciousness. It is recommended for less intelligent persons who have no better knowledge. Yeah, better knowledge means bhakti yoga, and that's what I'm going to be talking about tonight. Bhakti yoga means the yoga of love and devotion. Devotion to what? Devotion to the Supreme Lord. Giving our love, giving our understanding, giving our surrender, giving our submission, giving our complete eagerness to serve the Lord. So this is what Bhakti Yoga is about. And through the process of what I have just spoken, one develops an ever-increasing, ever-deepening, ever-uplifting love for Krishna, and gets to actually begin to have a relationship with Krishna, such a relationship that one is expressing or giving his love to the Lord, but the Lord does not stand like a stone. Actually, he's appreciating and enjoying and very much liking the love that the devotee is offering to him. And like a very sentient, feelingful person, he expresses love back. And his love is 1,000,000, trillion, billion, zillion times stronger and sweeter than our love. But it sweetens our love. so that when we begin to express love, it also becomes sweeter because we now have the amalgamation of the love that we have, which was not so great. But when we bring in Krishna's love, which has now come to us in reciprocation, the result is that people feel your love. This very often I hear this not only from myself but from other devotees, that after a year or two of Krishna consciousness, their friends or their relatives will sometimes say, there's something different about you, something so confident, something so pleasing, something which I like. I can't put my finger on it, I can't spell it out, but it's just so very nice. Whatever it is, please keep it up. And that is the love of Krishna expressing itself through we, his devotees. It's real. It's true, it's palpable. But one who has tasted the beauty of the Supreme Lord Krishna in the course of his advancement in Krishna consciousness no longer has a taste for dead material things. Let me give a little example of what really this means. Let us say that how many of us here have ever tasted stale bread? Oh, okay. So, stale bread, as you know, is generally hard and virtually tasteless unless you chew it at least 50 times, and then you'll begin to get a little bit of sweetness. Otherwise, it's not very tasty, but it has some taste, and if you're starving and you haven't eaten in 3 days, you'll think it's a great, great piece of food. So much for stale food. Now, suppose we've been having that most of our life, and that's all we know. We've never tasted anything else. And then one day you're invited to a friend's home for dinner or lunch, and you get fresh bread which came right out of the oven, and the fragrance is just entrancing. It moves. Well, what's this? Bread? That's bread? So, yeah. And then you taste the fresh bread which has come right out of the oven, and it's so delectable. It's so delightful, so enjoyable. You've never had it. You call this bread? What have I been eating for the last 30 years? So what happens is that there's a difference. One is which we would call a higher taste, a more enjoyable taste, a more lovable taste, a taste we would want to repeat. And the stale taste is something we don't want anymore. And that's what Srila Prabhupada has just mentioned, and that's what the verse has said also. I'll read the verse again. Though the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, the taste for sense objects remains. But ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness. So if, let's say we want to restrict ourselves from some particular food. We don't want to eat it anymore because it's putting on too many pounds on our body, and that is causing some difficulties in the functioning of our lungs or our liver or our pancreas or our digestive system. So we want to cut down on that. But some of those foods are so tasty that we can't restrict ourselves. I know so many people that tell me that if they don't have one piece of pizza once a week, they feel that they're not alive, feel they're dead. Their life not even worth living. Or if it's not that, it could be pasta, or it could be chocolate cake, or it could be M&Ms, or it could be Snickers, or Hershey bars, Nestle bars, you name it. These are what we call the craving foods. You taste them a few times and then you want them again and again and again. And even though they do taste good, I'm not putting them down because I on an occasional basis, do take some of those little, what do they call those? You put them in cookies, those little chocolate things. It's called chocolate chips. So once in a while they're okay, and if you have some control over your senses, then you can definitely deal with them on a once in a while basis. But if we don't have too much control and we're not experiencing what is being referred to here as a higher taste, then the result is that we become hooked, we become captured. So much so that sometimes a person will be sleeping, and then he has a dream of his favorite food. You know, maybe it's a Snicker bar, you know, and he's watching himself, all the chocolate go falling down the sides of his mouth, and he's dreaming, and he wakes up. He says, I got to get one. I got to have that now. But it's 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. But I remember it. I can't live without it. I must have it. So he puts his clothes on, goes down to the local 7-Eleven shop and buys himself he's looking, and he says, well, will one Hershey bar do? I'm pretty hungry right now. Well, maybe I should take 2. Should I take 3? Well, I can always eat 1 tonight and 1 tomorrow and then 1 the next day. No problem. So he takes the 3 and he eats. He says, well, maybe I shouldn't do this because it'll put the weight on me, and then I'm going to have problems with my, sugar excess in my blood, and then that's going to cause me a problem. I have to go to the doctor tomorrow. Yeah, but just 1 little piece is not going to help. I'll give the rest to my brother. So, cool. Okay, so he takes the piece, but it's so tasty, and he hasn't had it for 3 months. So he goes into almost a shock. He takes 1 piece. He said, well, 1 more won't hurt. So he takes another piece. So good. Just 1 more piece. Well, I don't have to go through this for another half hour. 1 more, because in a half hour, he's done with the first bar. Then he looks at the second one, and he says, well, this is for tomorrow. But then he says, I don't know if I can handle this. If I know it's here, why don't I just try 1 little piece, and then I'll take the rest tomorrow. Suffice it to say that he eats all 3 bars within an hour and a half. Craving, captured, enslaved. This is what it is. And I don't blame him, because it's normal to want to enjoy. That's a normal thing. Human beings like to enjoy. And it's nothing wrong with that, because it's part of the nature of the soul. Let me differentiate the soul from the body. This is the body. The soul is within the heart itself. So the soul itself, by its nature, it's blissful, it's peaceful and peaceful, knowledgeable, and it's full of love. That's the nature of the soul. Now, the soul is spiritual, okay? So, spiritual meaning that which is of God, that which is of the supreme, that which is of the infinite. That's God, and the soul is part and parcel of the supreme Lord. So, as I said, it's natural for the soul to want to enjoy, because its nature is bliss. But the unfortunate thing is this, is that it's not experiencing its real nature. We once were in a spiritual world, and in that spiritual world we were always blissful because we were doing what gives the soul satisfaction and fulfillment. Just like the body needs food, the soul needs food. If the soul doesn't have any food, then it doesn't get the bliss that it normally would have if it eats the foods which we call spiritual foods. Some of us are eating them tonight. So when the soul gets spiritual foods, then the result is that the soul will feel great pleasure, great ecstasy, great peacefulness, great happiness, great knowledge, great security, and great confidence. This is the nature of the soul, to be all those things. But generally speaking, human beings don't feed the soul. Instead of feeding the soul, we just feed the body. And feeding the body is not going to give us the happiness that the soul can, which comes from God and which is connected to God. It's a little like, for example, you have a car, okay? And it's a new car and you polish it up and it's gleaming and it's sparkling and it looks good and everyone who looks at it says, wow. And you feel so uplifted. So you get into your car and you turn or you push the button, however new your car is, and it doesn't, the engine turns, but what happens? You try to accelerate, but it doesn't go. Why doesn't it go? Because there's no gas in the car. If there's no gas in the car, then it's not going to go. No gas, no oil. So it just sits there looking beautiful, but unable to do anything. Okay? What good is the car? It's worthless, even though it's beautiful. So similarly, your body may be beautiful, but it's worthless unless it is experiencing the gas, quote unquote, of the soul. But if the soul is not being fed, if not being gassed up, then there's not going to be any soul power. The power of the soul is not going to manifest. So what is the food of the soul? Because we're going to get into this a little deeper. Since it's a spiritual item, the soul wants those things which are of its parent. And the parent of the soul is the supreme soul, whom we call God, or the super soul. So, if the soul is not receiving that, then it's not going to be manifesting, I should say, the normal ecstasy of the soul, the peace of the soul, the love of the soul, the knowledge of, it's all there, but it can't express it because there's nothing to actuate it. There's no food. It's starving. And that's what we're doing, starving the soul and polishing the body. Beautiful clothes or even nice physical material food. And so we get some, I was talking about pizza and pasta before and chocolate and all those. So these things do give some pleasure. That's why we eat them. But the pleasure is very temporary. It lasts as long as the object lasts. And depending upon how deep the craving is, that's how long the object will last. If the craving is very strong, that you can go through something very, very quickly, and if it's not so strong, slowly. So if the important thing is that the soul has to be fed. And if it doesn't get fed, it's starved. And if it doesn't get starved, we don't feel the inner joy that I just told about, the inner peace. It can only be actuated by spiritual food. I've got competition. Please, the child should be taken out because I don't want to be hearing this kind of while this is going on. Okay? It distracts me and it distracts others. Okay? Where is it? Upstairs? Downstairs? Over here? You have a child? Somebody? Please, no noise. Thank you very much. It's out of respect to everyone here, because if you keep hearing while I'm trying to explain about the soul, it's not going to be a pretty party. And then when it's all over, somebody says, what did he say? Well, I don't know. I heard a lot of So that's not what I want to say. So getting back to the important point of the soul is that the soul likes spiritual things because it's a spiritual item. So what are those things? There are 9 particular items on the soul's menu. Okay? Hearing about God is one of them, such as when you hear the scriptures or you hear about some particular pastimes. Chanting about the Lord, such as when we chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So when we chant that way, these words are powerfully spiritual. Yeah. So what happens is Hare is the name of Hare means it comes from Hara, and it means Radha, the spiritual aspect of the divine. And then we have Krishna, who is the masculine aspect of the divine. Hara is feminine, like Radha. So we have Krishna means all attractive, most beautiful, most wealthy, most powerful or influential, most famous, most renounced. And I left one out. Does anybody know? The one that and most knowledgeable. Thank you. Well, thanks for staying awake. So he's not knowledgeable, and therefore he has that in infinite degree. And to the degree that he lends it, he can lend it to us, then we become more knowledgeable, more renounced, more beautiful. Well, you might say, well, how could you become more beautiful? Well, beauty is not only the way your face is shaped, it's also the way you look, your eyes shine, and how you present yourself, the persona. For example, persons who have bright eyes and who have open eyes, that's persons who hold their lips like this. Not very pretty. But there are other ways persons have a smile on their lips. They're very attractive and you want to talk to them. It's just normal. So the point is this, is that beauty, wealth, strength, beauty, wealth, and strength, and fame, and knowledge, and renunciation, meaning detachment from all the pressures and problems and anxieties and uncertainties, to be able to put that aside. Those are all some of the opulences of the Supreme Lord, which we have in small degree, but which can be increased in greater degree as we continue to spiritualize our lives. And that's the most important thing, to spiritualize. So what is on the menu for spiritual food? Well, I've already said, hearing about God, chanting about the Lord, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, worshiping God, offering one's flowers or incense or love to the Lord, having a friendly feeling towards the Lord. These are all food that the Lord enjoys. He likes them. He feels uplifted from them. I should mention that God is always blissful. He's always happy. He's always joyful. But his degree of joy or ecstasy can be increased by the pure love of the devotee in his feeding of the Supreme Lord, or feeding his soul. When the soul is being fed, the Lord is very happy to see this. And the Lord, because the Lord receives that. Krishna is here and the soul is here. Okay? So Krishna is feeling what we are giving the soul. And when he feels that, he has a natural desire to want to reciprocate, give back. Just we all do. Somebody gives something to us, we like to give back something in return because we feel very much satisfied and pleased and uplifted. So when the Lord gives us in satisfaction, his satisfaction, he wants to give it back. He gives it back in the form of his love. And that love that we receive from him is depending upon how much he gives us, and that differs from individual according to what the individual, each of us, is giving to him. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, as they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. So to the degree that we surrender means I offer you my body, my mind, my intelligence, my food, my clothing, my this, my that. In effect, we actually don't give anything because the God owns everything already. But in illusion, we think, yes, I'm giving this. You didn't have to give it, but the very act of giving it is an act of love. And because it's an act of love, the Lord appreciates the act that we are offering and wants to reciprocate and does reciprocate. And when he does reciprocate, we feel joyfulness, we feel peacefulness, we feel happiness, we feel strength, we feel confidence, all the things that the human being wants to have but often doesn't have because he's identifying himself with his physical body instead of with the soul, which is the reality, the truth, which is forever. The soul never dies. When this physical thing called the body dies, the soul just goes on and by the laws of nature is sent to another human being through a process, and it enters into a sperm, and then the sperm enters into connects with an egg, and then the egg and the sperm unite, and what you have is you have another human being there. So that is just a process. In Krishna consciousness, our ultimate desire, ultimate goal is to not have to come back and take another birth and again experience the anxieties, the uncertainties, the miseries, the doubts, the pains, the pressures, the stresses. Who wants that? Nobody. So that's why in Krishna consciousness, I'm just mentioning, the more we feed the soul, the more the Lord is pleased, and the more the Lord gives back or reciprocates and makes us, so enables us, helps us to feel such joyfulness, peacefulness, confidence, upliftment, that all we want to do then is continue serving and loving not only the Lord, but trying to make new persons, offer to other persons this same opportunity to feel the ecstasy and the peace and the strength and the love. So in this particular talk, as I have already mentioned, when we begin to experience the ecstasy of the innermost life, there's a nice verse in the Bhagavad Gita, if I can remember it. A liberated person is not attracted to material things, but is always in trance. He's always enchanted, but is always in trance. A material person is not attracted to material things, but is always in trance because he is always in contact with the Supreme Lord, who is giving him the things that he needs to truly feel inwardly happy as well as outwardly happy. It's not only a one-way street of just inner happiness. You feel it within. Now, what does it mean to feel it within? When Krishna, like turning on a faucet, turns on the faucet of his love, and it comes from the heart, it spreads from the heart throughout the entire body. And one feels this blissfulness, this happiness, this satisfaction, this fulfillment. You want to jump, you want to dance, you want to clap. It's this. I see devotees here, like those of you who were here a little earlier. So many of them were jumping and dancing and clapping because they were feeling just that, because they were chanting the holy name of God, which is another one of the foods on the menu. Let's go over those ingredients again. We have hearing the Lord's name, chanting the Lord's name, remembering Krishna, his incidents, his pastimes, the things that he's done. You see them around the wall. You see them up on the ceiling. These are actual facts of happening that happened long ago. But when we think about them and we imagine them or we recall them, that is food for the soul. And when the soul is fed in that manner, again, it's feeling very, very satisfied. Just as if, for example, you haven't eaten in 3 days and suddenly you have a meal, or like the person who was eating stale bread for 30 years and finally you got a real piece of fresh bread. It's like a different world. So when one begins to experience the ecstasy of Krishna consciousness, which is basically the love flowing out of God's heart into our heart, it's indescribable. There are no words that can actually describe it. And when it comes, one has no desire for anything else, because someone will say, well, what about, sexual pleasure? How does that figure into this? Here is the point. we learn or we know that many great saints and sages often observe celibacy. So is that a forced celibacy? Well, it could be, but on the basis of what I'm talking about, which is feeding the soul, and there are a few other things on the menu, such as I said, having a friendly mood towards or a friendly feeling towards the Supreme Lord, surrendering one's body, one's mind, and one's words to the Lord. So the more one gives oneself to Krishna, who's right in the heart, you don't have to go someplace. But coming here to hear about that is useful, because when you go home and you know you don't have to go very far, he's right here waiting for your call, waiting for your response. And will then in turn respond. So that's really what this is all about. It's about learning how to love the Supreme Lord through these different 9 methods which I've given. I'll repeat them again. It's hearing about Krishna, chanting his name, remembering him and remembering the incidents that are on the wall, serving his feet, washing his feet if you like, worshiping him. You can take incense, you can take milk, you can take water, you can take a flower. These are different food for the soul. And sometimes say, what do you mean the food for feed the soul? Yes. And when the soul is fed, it feels completely satisfied. Of course, you want to give him more than just a little drop. You give it a full meal. Like we had chanting for at least 40 minutes here, and everyone was jumping and dancing and clapping and yelling and screaming. This is the outcry or the outlet of the soul. It is said that music is the language of the soul. And I really saw that tonight. I really learned about music just looking. And it's so wonderful. And when it comes from spiritual source, it's amazing. So that's the food. And here's the wind up. When that is going on every day, you come to the program here, or you do it in your home, or you do both, and you're feeding your soul every day, and the soul is getting a full meal. Well, how are you going to be when you go to your office, or you go to work, or wherever you're going to do? You're going to be literally, without a doubt, you'll be ecstatic. You'll feel so joyful, so happy. But you don't have to put on a big happy face, like they draw, the funny faces with the big smiles. It doesn't have to be a show thing. One feels it within his heart. What does that mean in terms of happiness? It means this, that if you get a letter which tells you that somebody somebody wants you to pay him back from a loan that he gave you 3 years ago, you don't feel so bad. You say, well, how could I have done that? 3 years I waited, I'll pay him today. Yeah. Your response is always positive. And when your response is positive, then you don't get it. Nobody gets a chance to pull you down. You're always uplifted, because that inner joy that comes from Krishna, that comes from the Lord, is always circulating through our body. And through that circulation of ecstasy, peacefulness, strength, knowledge, confidence, nothing affects, nothing disturbs, nothing shakes. That doesn't happen all at once. It's a very gradual activity. And we need to be patient, just like a woman, for example. She wants to have a baby, okay? So she becomes pregnant. She can't demand that the baby, I want now. That's not going to come. Whatever will come will be a miscarriage. It has to wait for the proper amount of time. Similarly, spiritual uplift, spiritual development, spiritual ecstasy, that grows and grows and grows, and we need to be patient. We need to be understanding. We shouldn't try to understand God's business. He knows what he's doing. Sometimes he makes it difficult for us. Sometimes he makes it so easy for us. Sometimes he makes it joyful for us. Other times he makes it hard for us. Everything has a purpose to enable us, to teach us, to help us build and develop and come to a higher and higher position. It's like when you go to school, you start from kindergarten, and you can go eventually, many years later, have a PhD in a subject that you only admired when you were little taught. So everything takes time. And everyone will attain and achieve that which he or she wants, as long as it's something that's in complete harmony, something which is useful, which is beneficial, and is in accord with Krishna's will, because he will not allow you to do something which will harm yourself or which will harm another human being. For example, a person prays, this person, he insulted me. Lord, I want to be able to get a gun easy and blow his brains out. Krishna's not going to give that. And he's not even going to let you find the gun. No, he's a good God. He'll rather give you guidance to why we should not do that. And therefore, once we know what we should not do, then that changes our decision and it changes our life. Our life is basically a mass of decisions. And when we make the decision which is in complete harmony with God's wish, we can only feel uplifted, joyful, happy, satisfied, and very eager to share that which we have with others. Very often, people don't like to share. Some do, but many don't. They like to hold. Like a person, he gets a certain amount of money, he finds out his neighbor has just as much, he wants to get more. It's greed. But a devotee always feels so expanded in this great, large increase of happiness. And when you have that, nobody can ever take it from you. And when you leave this world, where do you go? You go back home, back to Godhead, to the spiritual world. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Does somebody have a question that maybe I caused? If you have a question, you're welcome to ask it. I have no problem with that. Those of you who are really hungry, you have a question? You can give him he has a microphone, he'll give it to you. Please go ahead.
So you mentioned about spiritual food. Like
What?
Spiritual food?
Yes.
Such as like chanting the holy name, hearing about Krishna. So if I do this at home, does that mean I don't have to come to the temple to make spiritual advancement? If I do these activities at home, does one not have to come to the temple to make spiritual advancement?
No, you don't have to come to the temple, but it helps, because association with others who are doing the same thing will help to inspire you to continue doing what you started. And if you start something and it's moving along and you have other people doing it, it's very helpful. So it's not absolutely essential. If you're already well along the path, you've been doing this for 10 years, I know people, they don't come to the temple, but they do all the things that they do at the temple, they do in their homes. They have altar, deity, but they love to come to the temple because of the people who are here, the deities who are here, sorry, and the programs that go on here. Sorry. So does that answer your question, I hope?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, any other questions you have? No? Is everybody satisfied? Yeah? Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Dandavata Pranam Maharaj. I have a question regarding willful action and destiny.
What is that?
Willful action and destiny.
Spiritual action and destiny. Let me ask you one question first. Does it pertain to anything I said in today's talk?
No.
If it does not, we'll talk about it privately together.
Okay.
Otherwise, there's no point.
Okay.
I want something that concerns what I've talked about this evening so that everybody can take benefit of your question. Okay. No? Any other? Okay. But, you got to go. Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
You mentioned that when we
Excuse me.
when we get our full spiritual meal, we are happy. But and that happiness keeps us immune from the external sufferings that we get in life. So does that come immediately or that takes time?
No, it takes time, but also let me just add something to what you just said. You said that it stops, did you say it stops the suffering? Is that what you said?
Yeah, does it make us immune from the suffering?
Yeah, you'll feel so happy that you will not have these suffering. Yes, it does take time because there are so many bad habits we have, so many bad ideas we have, so many wrong ideas that we have. So these things have to be gradually purified out of our system. And when they are completely out, it's like, how does it feel to have a clean body after a shower? So when you begin the shower and you start taking off little, you feel different. And as you continue to take the dirt off, the whole body feels completely different. So that's pretty much the same thing. We're dealing with dirt of a different sort, though. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. There's a hand behind you, Prabhu.
Hi, thank you so much. It was a wonderful talk. And I had a question about attachments.
About what?
About attachments. Like you mentioned that our soul has a desire to be with God, right?
Yeah.
Then our body has certain desires and certain cravings for certain foods or drinks. How, for example, I drink coffee every morning, right?
What is that?
I drink coffee every morning.
You drink what?
Coffee.
Coffee, okay.
And I'm trying to fight that habit for a very long time. So I'm wondering, is there anything you can suggest how to get rid and clean our body from bad habits and to purify our body?
Yeah. Well, first of all,
Thank
giving
you.
up coffee is very, I don't know how many cups you take a day, but the more you take, the more difficult it is to give it up. That I do know.
Yes, that's yes.
Because many years ago, I worked in an industry that is very coffee-oriented, and I was one of the drinkers. So I have a little bit of a background in that. And the first thing that I had to learn is that it had to be done very gradually. If I try to do it, all at once, there was what they call a withdrawal symptoms. It's just like any drug. Same thing, especially if you're taking, many people take 10 cups of coffee a day, it's like nothing, and some even 20. So the first thing is that it has to be cut down, and you need to develop your will that you're going to take. Let's just say, for example, I'm not saying that this is you, but let's say you normally take 10 a day, okay? So you have to count them, okay? Every time you try, okay, I vowed, for this week it will be 9, okay? And then you try the next week and see how it goes. 8, you should be able to do that, and you have to stretch out the time a little bit so that it works in such a way that you will not get the withdrawal symptoms. Or if the withdrawal symptoms come, they are so slight that you hardly feel them, and you can actually deal with them because you have enough will to deal with them. But if you have to deal with 7 or 8 withdrawal symptoms, that can be quite an overwhelming what we call a juggernaut. It comes from the word Jagannath. Juggernaut means an overwhelming happening. So therefore, you'll find that now you were doing 10, and after several weeks now you're doing it back down to 5. But that should give you confidence that you can go down to 4. Now you may have to stay at 5 for a few weeks. You may not be able to handle the withdrawal of 4 yet. So, but your willpower is gaining, it's developing, and your confidence is developing. So keep it in mind. And there are a number of books which talk exactly about what I'm talking about right now, dealing with withdrawal symptoms. And but as I said, if you just do it little by little, you will be able to get rid. But more important, as I said, you got to pray. Pray to Krishna. Please, Lord, help me. On my own, I'm often helpless. I am so addicted, I'm so bound, I'm so stuck on it. I need your help. Suppose I don't have enough willpower to even deal with the minimal withdrawal symptoms. You need God's help even for that. So make the Lord his help, and he will give it. How do I know? He mentions that in the Bhagavad Gita. You have Bhagavad Gita, 1857, 1858. In all activities, just depend upon me and work always under my protection. In such devotional service, be fully conscious of me. If you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. If, however, you do not work in such consciousness, but act through false ego, me, I don't need God, I don't need any help, I can do it on my own. That's false ego consciousness. You will be lost, he says. Okay, so I don't want you to get lost, okay? Stay found by the Lord.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much. Hare Krishna. Anyone else? No? Is that it? I see some hands moving in the back. Is that a camera? Oh, no, it's a face. Sorry. Didn't mean to demean you. My apologies. Okay, I guess that's it. Please enjoy your prasadam. And remember, it's been offered to the Lord. It's on the menu. Eat as much as you like, but don't overdo it. Okay? Thanks so much. Hare Krishna. 하나씩 올려. 하나씩 해.